With Estevao Willian set to sign for us, does this mean that we're going to stop signing the best of what Brazil can offer anytime soon? Absolutely not. Today, my friends, we discuss the latest transfer reports, and in a separate video, I'll be discussing the latest manager updates, so make sure you guys have those bell notification buttons on, hit that like button, let's try and get over 2k likes, and let's not waste any more time now. Let's turn our attentions to Barcelona. As we all know, this afternoon, Barca and Xavi have parted ways. Does this now mean that Xavi may be one of the surprise candidates to replace Pochettino? Most likely not. I don't see that happening at all, but as we know, Barca will most likely have to sell some high-profile players this summer, and the player who's most likely to be leaving Barcelona this summer is their experienced defender, Ronald Arujo. Now, reports today from Sport seem to state that it's very likely that Araujo will leave Barcelona this summer. Now, he currently has 2 years left on his deal. His contract expires in 2026, and we know what this means when players have 2 years left on their deal. Now, at Barca, they have been trying to entice him to remain, but they have failed in renewal talks, and essentially it comes down to this. When Araujo signed his contract with Barca in 2022, during that time when they had to activate economic levers for fun, most players had to defer payments to the future to help Barcelona out financially. Fast forward now to the present, and Barcelona, unsurprisingly, are struggling to pay off all the players that are still owed money. It seems like Araujo now is growing a bit disillusioned with life at Barcelona, and it feels like right now he could be ready to test new waters, and most definitely he wants to get paid what is owed towards him. So, with clubs like Bayern who have shown long-term interest in the player, we're also learning today that Man United and us are really fighting it out now and are prepared to offer big money to try and sign him. And I guess I'll give my thoughts and opinions because it's a pretty interesting story. Now, as we know, Silva's left us, he's going to Fluminense, and Chalobah most likely will be sold even though he doesn't want to leave. And I think it will be difficult because Chalobah only wants to go towards another good competitive sporting project. He won't be going to Nottingham Forest or Fulham's or any clubs like that. So we have to see how those things play out. But as we've learned, we're most definitely in the market to sign another defender and potentially 2 more. That kind of surprises me. I think we keep forgetting that we happen to owe a particular centre-back called Wesley Fofana. He's one of the highest earning players at the club. He's earning nearly 200,000 bags a week. He had a terrible injury which kept him out all throughout last season, but he will come back for next season, and we can't forget about his potential and his talent because, in my opinion, I think Fofana and Araujo are quite similar. And I think to myself, does it make financial sense for us to spend so much money on signing Wesley Fofana with maybe like 2 years more experience? I'm not too sure personally. Now, on one hand, because I like to do things pros and cons, the pros behind signing an Araujo is that he does have big European experience. He has improved as a player. He has improved with his ball distribution. When he first came through at Barcelona, that part of the game wasn't his strongest suit. But after working under Xavi now for a few seasons, he is able to maybe like pin a ball to like the overlapping Alejandro Balde, like on a fly, and get better now at kickstarting attacks. I wouldn't say he's the best at that, and I think that part of his game gets exposed more whenever he's forced to play as a right back at Barcelona against his best wishes. But essentially it came down to this: Koundé was growing very disillusioned at constantly having to play as a right back. Barca gave him a lot of money. I think he's earning like nearly 10 million a year, and it's no surprise that eventually he was able to get game time as a centre back with Araujo playing out wide. But I think playing out wide exposes maybe how he can be a bit slow on the ball, a little bit ponderous at times, and when you're playing as a centre-back, you do have more time and space on the ball compared to like nearly any other position. But you know what, I think one of the things about Araujo that we could benefit from would be that aggression, which we have lacked ever since we allowed Rudiger to leave on a free. But equally at the same time, I think that's also one of Araujo's weaknesses. It's not like he's Rudiger where he's like, you know, mastered his game in that aspect. I feel like if you're a smart player, and I've seen this quite a lot of times this season, you can use that aggressiveness against Araujo because he's one of these guys where he has to win every single tackle. He has to physically assert himself in everything he does. and smart players use that against him time and time again. I think this is why there's been so many high-profile errors and misjudgments that you've seen from Araujo last season. And in my opinion, I might sound a bit crazy to you guys, but I think he's kind of regressed a little bit. And I don't like when we sign players that regress. I remember when we signed Saul on loan, I was like, has no one watched this guy for the past 2 years? He's not as good as he used to be. And I think with Araujo, I just think that we have a better caliber of defender that has that potential to be on his level, and some have the potential to be even better than him. So I can understand why we could be interested, but I think with the money it's going to cost, I just don't think it's worth it or responsible for this team right now. So they're only my thoughts and opinions. I could be sounding crazy to you guys, and some of you guys are thinking, listen, Willian Araujo is like signing the second coming of Van Dijk. What are you talking about? And I understand that, but I just think where we are as a team right now, that money could be divested a bit more responsibly in my opinion. But how do you guys feel? Let us know below. And now let's move on to the big stories today, and it will be like a two-part. So for the first part, we discuss the small updates around Estevao Willian. As we all know, he will be signing for us from next week now. He just has to sign the contract, but there is an agreement across all parties. That's great news. For the final fee, it will be 40 million upfront plus 25 million in add-ons, and Estevao Willian will sign a 7-year deal with the documents being signed next week. So that's great news. But we're also learning that Estevao Willian will play for Palmeiras in next year's Club World Cup tournament. Now, this means that he will be playing against us, but it seems like this was part of the stipulations in which Palmeiras would accept our offer. I think that's okay, and I think that for Estevao to have that experience with this team, get that final last and hurrah before coming to us, could set him up in the best possible way for 2025. So I'm fine with that. But interestingly enough though, during those negotiations to finally tie this deal down, we had to send some big reps and some big scouts to attend games to watch Estevao Willian firsthand. Now, naturally, we all know that scouts attended the Palmeiras vs Independiente game in the Copa Libertadores, and I just hate saying that word, but it's always a struggle, I don't know why. And outside of that, they also attended 2 more games. Now, from our part, that was just formalities, you know, just to get this deal over the line, because irrespective of how he played, we were set to sign him. But this now leads us on to the second big part of the video, and we learned that we also had scouts attend some games involving Corinthians. This was revealed by Nicola Jorge, and he states that we watched Corinthians beat Argentina Juniors 4-0 in the Sudamericana. Now, we have no idea behind the players that we were focusing on, but if I had to take some educated guesses, there are 3 players that are on my mind. And it does seem like we aren't ending our pursuits of signing some of Brazil's best up-and-coming talents, because originally we had a vision of signing maybe up to 5 max top South American talents. I guess essentially this means that we're maybe like 1 or 2 more spots off. So for the final part of this video, these are the 3 players I think we paid attention to for Corinthians. For that first player, I think Breno Bidon would be one of the players that we paid a lot of attention to. Now, he stood out in the Copina tournament, and the Copina in Brazil is essentially like a famous Brazilian youth tournament which involves all the clubs from across Brazil, and it's normally known as that cradle for young talents to emerge and to announce himself and to show who is ready now to play in top flight football in Brazil. And Bidon most definitely stood out. Now, he's like a very technical, silky player, left-footed, and I think if I gave you guys an easy example, he's in that same like category as like a Kovacic or a Thiago Alcantara, because there's this ease behind his game. He's very press resistant. You see his lovely Cruyff turns, his drop of the shoulders, close controls in tight areas. He's one of those players which it looks like he plays the game at his own pace, and I've always really liked players like that. At the moment, he's playing in like a pivot, in a 3, and further forwards. He's only now making himself at Corinthians. He's still quite young. But what I like about him is that there's this consciousness behind his moves where everything's kind of like there's a plan behind what he's doing. He's not making it up on the spot because he has that vision in his head. And most times he is able to execute that. Now, a lot of times when we discuss young players, it's very easy for us to fall into this mindset of thinking they're the next this, they're the next that. At this stage, they will make mistakes in their game. It's only natural because they're only now getting their first introduction into top flight football. But you have to see what they could become by focusing on their best attributes and then seeing how that could translate in the future as they get more experience. Because a lot of times the great players at youth level can one day finally translate that type of youth football at a first team level. And like I said, you're seeing it on screen, you know, he's smooth, great sense of gravity, manipulates the ball properly, you know, great body balance to shift opponents as well. But as I keep saying, equally, he could announce himself with Corinthians a bit more, but realistically, has that ever stopped us? We signed David Washington and he barely played any football at Santos and he's barely played any football for us. So let's see what happens. But that wouldn't surprise me that we're looking at a player like this to add within our club network. Now for the next player, and this is probably the one that I think would be the most likely player that we're following. You guys are probably guessing this, but it has to be Wesley Gasova. Now he's 19 years old. He plays as a left winger in Corinthians 3-4-3, but he can also play as a striker. And I'd say in terms of like his stocky build, his physicality, his explosiveness, his power, and his ability to just eat up yards for fun, I think physically he could be more ready, of course, to, you know, sign for us and become part of our network model. Now, I think he's been very impressive for Corinthians this season. I think like 5 goals, 2 assists at 19. It's not bad. But what I like about his game is just like the explosiveness, that change of direction that he has from like starting standpoints. And he's one of those players that looks like he's constantly just accelerating and accelerating, like the longer he's going on runs, right? But he has like that great body strength as well. He's got that dynamism, very quick and explosive play. And statistically already, he is one of the top 3 dribblers in the Brazilian league. So you're not getting a record like this for no reason. And I do think that we don't necessarily have enough left wing talents at our disposal within our model. So he could fit that bill. And I think that we most likely could have to act fast because we know that West Ham, for example, their sporting director wants to sign him this summer. And West Ham are prepared now to pay 26 million to bring Wesley in this season. This is what gives me the confidence that physically, he could be ready for Premier League football. He could be ready to play in Ligue 1. Brazilian players love signing for us because they all earn at least like 30% of their economic rights. So they become instant millionaires overnight. So let's watch this space because I would not be surprised if at some point in this window, we made a late move to sign Wesley and then loaned him out to Strasbourg. It seems like it'll be between, in my opinion, Wesley, if we're still following him, and obviously Ramon Sosa, that we are still holding conversations with at this point in time. And for the final player, I'm guessing that could be maybe Yuri Alberto. Now, he's a bit of an outlier in this because he's like 23 years old. He had his struggles at Zenit St. Petersburg, especially with everything happening politically. You know, he came back to Brazil and, you know, he's a pretty like decent hold-up striker that can link the play, withdraw from the play, and has decent finishing, works hard in the channels, and another player that West Ham came close at signing actually. But I wouldn't say he's as prolific as someone that a club of our stature should be looking towards. And I wouldn't know what the play would be because I do think we have signed enough forwards for Strasbourg already. Unless we are planning on maybe, you know, as part of the Blue Co relationship, signing some more experience for them to help out with them for next season. But for this one, I think most likely this won't be the case. But anyway, my friends, they're the 3 players I feel like our scouts could have been following for Corinthians. Corinthians are producing some great youth talent at the moment. Obviously, we missed out on signing Gabriel Moscardo, who's now set to go to Paris Saint-Germain. But again, Brazil are now finally producing some of these fantasy options, technical players, flair players, because that's what we've always known Brazil for. That's why Brazil has like a soft place in all our footballing hearts because of the players that they produce. And is it any surprise to me that it seems like our strategy is similar to what we showed with scouring the best talents from Belgium? It seems like we want to make sure we have first dibs on the best of what Brazil can offer, create the networks, of course, allow them to integrate into Europe, and then hopefully, if everything works to plan, as the club are hoping it does, these guys become our future first team players. So let's see what happens. So my friends, on that note, that's the first video out the way. Share your thoughts and opinions. And on that note, I'm Nini FC. This is BlueLionsTV. See you all soon.